This is a great time to be in real estate in the North Country. Prices are high, maybe higher than they've ever been. Sellers are getting what they want, and that means more commission for the realtor. But lots of local people, especially young families, can't afford what's on the market. A conversation with one Adirondack realtor about how he's managing the market these days. That's today's story of the day.
Support for Story of the Day comes from Long Run Wealth, an SEC-registered investment advisor in Lake Placid, providing comprehensive wealth management, retirement, and financial planning solutions. LongRunWealth.com.
Hey, I'm David Sommerstein. It's Wednesday, July 17th. First up, cleanup is underway in the Glens Falls area after a line of severe thunderstorms moved through the region last night. High winds knocked down trees and poles, shutting down roads and cutting off power to more than 170,000 customers. Governor Kathy Hochul declared a statewide state of emergency in response. Glens Falls Mayor Bill Collins says city workers are picking up debris.
And the cleanup is going to be multiple days. We've got much of the power back in Glens Falls, but still some power out, and National Grid is working on that as best they can.
Wind gusts were measured between 70 to 87 miles an hour, with the peak reported in Glens Falls. Joe Villani is a meteorologist with the National Weather Service.
So very unusual winds, I would say, for this area. Typically severe thunderstorms around here usually produce winds around 60 miles per hour. So these were quite a bit more than we usually see in this part of the country.
More than 70,000 customers remain without power statewide, according to PowerOutage.com. 12,000 of those are in Warren County, where Glens Falls is, with another 7,000 in Essex and Hamilton counties. U.S. Senators Chuck Schumer and Kirsten Gillibrand are calling on FEMA to approve any New York State request for a major disaster declaration stemming from the storms. One of the oldest great camps in the Adirondacks has finally reached a verdict on how to make it accessible to people with mobility disabilities. But as NCPR's David Escobar reports, advocates say the state's solution may not help everyone.
Great Camp Santanoni is deep in the woods outside Newcomb. There's a 4.5-mile trail to get there, but it hasn't been wheelchair accessible. The Department of Environmental Conservation announced a plan to change that on Wednesday. It'll provide all-terrain electric scooters and wheelchairs to visitors with disabilities. The mobility devices are part of a new DEC pilot program, which will be free for visitors. The new program comes after months of debate over how to best accommodate visitors with mobility issues. Over 2 decades ago, 3 parkgoers with physical disabilities sued the state under the Americans with Disabilities Act for failing to make forest preserve lands accessible. The DEC settled the lawsuit by saying it would provide people with disabilities access to Great Camp Santanoni May through October. But the only previous form of accessible transportation into the Great Camp was a horse-drawn wagon, which wasn't ADA compliant. DEC Interim Commissioner Sean Mahar says the new wheelchair pilot program will allow a greater number of people with disabilities to access the site. But disability advocate Scott Remington says he has mixed feelings about the state's plan. He also serves on the Adirondack Park Agency's Accessibility Committee.
I feel good that they made a step to try and do something, but they're really not doing enough.
Remington lives in Brant Lake and says he's still waiting to try out the state's new equipment for himself. But he explained that visitors with certain disabilities, like hand mobility issues, could still face challenges navigating the new devices.
Not everybody's going to be able to get on that and go, whether they have a spinal cord injury or they have MS or something like that. They're going to have somebody help them, and then they're not going to be able to maybe even run the device.
The pilot program comes with other limitations. Visitors will have to reserve a wheelchair online ahead of their visit, and reservations will only be available every other Friday through Sunday through the middle of October. State officials say they'll continue to collect feedback from the community to figure out future ways to make Great Camp Santanoni more accessible. David Escobar, North Country Public Radio, Saranac Lake.
That was David Escobar. He's NCPR's newest reporter. He's a Report for America core member who's going to be reporting on diversity issues in the Adirondacks. He's going to be based in Saranac Lake. We're sharing him with Adirondack Explorer magazine. So you're going to see and hear his stories in the magazine and on NCPR and on our website, of course. So great to have you, David. Welcome, David Escobar. The real estate industry is everywhere, even in the most remote corners of the Adirondacks. So what's it like to help buy and sell houses in those remote corners? And what's it like in a housing market that often pits vacationers against local families? That's today's North Country at Work story. Anna Williams-Bergen has more.
Jeff Lemelson is in his early 30s. He spent most of his career working for a lumber company. He lived in Chestertown, where he's from, and commuted to Indian Lake.
My customers and my employees were all like, oh, you got to move up here, you got to move up here. And I was like, I'm never going to do that. And then I met my girlfriend, and then we bought a house, and we got a dog, and I don't think I'm going anywhere.
Not long after Lemelson settled in Indian Lake, his lumber yard went out of business. But the mortgage payment on that new house wasn't going to stop.
And so at the time, I was 31, and I was like, well, if I'm going to try something different, now's a great time to do it.
Lemelson thought real estate might be a good fit. So he went to a local agency, Gadway Realty, and asked the woman who'd sold him his house for some advice.
And I got done kind of explaining to her my thought process, and she was like, well, you could come work here. And I was like, I wasn't asking for a job, but that sounds good.
Lemelson got his real estate license in 2022, and so far he says it seems like a good fit. Lemelson already knew a lot about building materials from his experience in the lumber industry, and seeing so many houses has helped give him an eye for things.
It's having the experience to know the things to look for. So, what does the roof look like? And the difference between, it's older, but it's in good shape, as opposed to you should really replace that.
Lemelson works for Gadway Realty, which is based in Indian Lake. This area isn't your everyday real estate market. Nestled right in the middle of the Adirondacks with lots of beautiful waterfront, locals aren't doing most of the buying.
We estimate maybe somewhere around like 75 to 80% of the people that are looking to buy in this area are, looking for a vacation home, a second home, things like that.
And Lemelson says that can put local realtors like him in a tough spot.
The balancing act of you want to sell houses, right? But you also want to try and help locals get into their houses. And it can be difficult seeing houses that would be a great fit for a young family in town go to people that aren't going to use it year round.
But Lemelson says at the end of the day, you have to work for your seller, and money talks. It's definitely one of the tougher parts of his job, but he says getting to connect with people is one of the highlights and why he got into real estate in the first place.
I could talk all day long. A lot of what this industry is about is building relationships and connecting with people, right? And that's something I've always known that I could just do.
There's also a lot of paperwork. That part's not so flashy. But Lemelson says showing houses is about as fun as it gets.
It doesn't happen every day, but when you do get to show houses, you get to go out, throw your sunglasses on, drive around, and show beautiful houses.
And Lemelson says it doesn't hurt that they're located in the beautiful Adirondack Park. For North Country Public Radio's North Country at Work project, I'm Anna Williams-Bergen in Indian Lake.
Amy Feiereisel contributed to the story, which was recorded at a North Country at Work event in Indian Lake. There was one today in Elizabethtown, and there's going to be more in other places around the region. You can find the schedule and find lots more North Country at Work stories on the website ncpr.org/work. Music today by Lost in Beijing of Keene and Mark Corey of Watertown. I'm David Summerstein, North Country Public Radio.